Our presentation is called Teaching Fish to Fly. Anne came up with that. Again, a round of applause for Anne, because this would not be possible without her. So Anne thought that this was the appropriate topic for our presentation because I had shown her this Escher painting, or etching rather, which I'm sure you've all seen, that goes from fish to flying. And if you look at the way you all learned, and certainly I learned, maybe not all of you, we were fish, we were in water. And now the way in which our students have to learn, it's an entirely different element. They're learning in air. So instead of learning to swim, they're learning to fly. So we made that the name of our presentation. The changes we're going to see over the next 10 to 20 years kind of divide into two basic buckets as I see it. Some of what we do is going to be automated. Some of what we do has already been automated. Some of what how in which we do it is going to be atomized. And atomized is breaking it into job fragments. And in the instances in ways where it's digital, they can be done anywhere around the world. So if you're a faculty member and you hire someone to build curriculum, you've already atomized part of your job. You've already broken into a fragment that somebody else can do. And the more work becomes digitized, it can be done in Bangladesh, where the cost is different. So any part of your job, and I know Anne does this with a lot of aspects of work, she will say, I'll get this done through Fiverr or through Upwork. There are these work intermediary platforms, and that is going to dramatically change. It already has, but it's really dramatically going to change work, particularly for our students. So if we look at what we do and how we do it, a study by Oxford in 2013 says 47% of what we do today, all the jobs we have today, or at least the ones they had in terms of 2013, will be replaced, entirely replaced by automation by 2033, which is just 17 years away. So we're preparing students for jobs that many of which don't exist anymore, and we're preparing them for jobs that don't exist yet. Martin Ford, who's the author of the book Rise of the Robots, says that that's actually going to be 75%, but it's going to take longer. That's even scarier. And then if we look at how we do it, 34% of the workforce was freelance in 2014. It's closer to about 40% right now. And a study that Intuit did in 2010 predicted that in the next 4 years it would be about 40%. They now think that's going to be about 50%. So what we do and how we do it, half of that changing in the next 4 to 17 years. That's a dramatic shift because higher ed's always been not only in education but preparing people for the workforce. And if half of what they do is no longer going to be there, how do you shift? And that's part of the reason we came up with the Agile mindset. So if you look at problems in terms of type, along a continuum from problems that are known to problems that are predictable to problems that are ambiguous. And then the tasks we do to solve those problems from repetitive to discrete, which is something that can be contained beginning and end without infecting anything else, to complex. The stuff that's repetitive and known is what's going to be automated. The predictable and the discrete will be atomized. And the uniquely human work, the stuff that humans can do and it's very difficult to replicate by robots right now, is the complex and ambiguous work. And the more we can contain the uniquely human work into tasks, discrete tasks, it can be atomized. And the atomized work grows. The more we can codify work, it becomes automated, and the automated work grows. So when we look at the cost of solving that work and the value we can unlock, the more repetitive work will be atomized and augmented. So we got to focus training students to do uniquely human work. So how many of you guys have heard of T-shaped thinkers? Only a few of you. Okay, T-shaped thinkers, it's the philosophy that you use to train people just in an expertise. And if you focus on training in breadth and depth at the same time, and I say that the gen ed skills are really, or originally were intended to train for the breadth. They allow the ability to connect to other disciplines, to span across domains. About 30%, if you do it by credit hours or focus, is on the top of the T right now. And about 70% is in the depth of the expertise. The uniquely human skills are really concentrated on the top of the T. In some disciplines, it's also in the base of the T. But that's becoming something we need to rethink. The discipline skills once focused on just executing, so transferring the predetermined skills from you guys as experts to the next generation of experts is a model that no longer works. We've got to focus on the portability and the adaptability and learning agility. And we may need to think about not flipping those necessarily, but maybe rebalancing the percentage of our focus. So if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and apply that to learning, the old model was to say, okay, this sort of the base of the pyramid that we recognize is foundational skills. We focus on what we can measure and prove. That's what we've been doing in K-12 for too long, standardized tests to death. And the top of it was, what's your expertise so you can get your first job? Because higher ed, as Greg knows, is entirely focused on what's your first job and how much did you make? That's such faulty logic, it's ridiculous. And the bottom of the pyramid that's been missed for a long time are what are the conditions in which somebody can learn? Because the conditions under which you could learn in a time where you only had to get one dose of education wasn't as important. The conditions under which you can learn when your whole life's going to be education is much more important. So we think the new pyramid looks like this, becoming very explicit and addressing those conditions for learning. How do you learn? What kind of learner are you? What environment do you learn in? Knowing your learning style so that you can continue to learn. Focusing on the foundational skills really being portable skills, and how do you adapt and apply those to new circumstances. The domain expertise is still there, but it's something we've got to focus on expanding and replacing because you're going to go through many more jobs and many more roles. And the top of the pyramid is the power of learning. It's learning agility and the agile mindset. That's what we think learning looks like, and that's what we're trying to build here. So if we look at globalization, Fortune 500 is just a listing of the really big companies. In 1990, 5% of them were in the developing world. In 2010, 17%. We estimate it's about 20% now. By 2025, 45% of Fortune 500 companies will be in the developing world, which means our economic power base is shifting out of the US and out of the developing countries. We have to adapt for that. If we look at our demographics, and this is just US based, the 2013 line is there because it was the last time they got really good data. Our fertility rate has been dropping, so we're having fewer babies. At the same time, our life expectancy is rising, so we have more old people hanging around, which is great. We have fewer babies, and our labor participation rate, which peaked at one point in time, is now dropping. And we only had 2% of the population over 85 in 1950 and only 8% over 65. We will, in our lifetimes, or many of our lifetimes, 20% will be over 65 and almost 5% will be over 85. We will hit a point soon where we will have more people over 65 than under 12. They call it the more walkers than strollers moment. And I want you to keep 2036 in mind on this because we're going to talk about the year 2036 when we're going to see a big shift in those demographics. Now, if we look at the entire world, or we look at two segments of it, the developing and the developed world, we just discussed the fertility rates dropping when life expectancy is going up. The opposite is happening in aspects of the developing world, particularly in Northern Africa and the Middle East and South America. So in the US, the more walkers and strollers moment I mentioned. In Japan right now, about 13% of the population is over 75. So they're having a huge aging crisis. At the same time, 50% of the labor force in Egypt is under 30 today, and the section of the Middle East to Northern Africa, 2/3 of the population is under 25. So there's a youth boom happening in the other part of the world. What does that mean for you guys as educators where your primary customers have been the youth and they're declining in the US? So you guys are in the business of creating experts. How many of you guys have typed a search into Google for a medical condition you didn't want to talk about with anybody, or a sound your car was making, or something your dog or kid was doing? How many of you guys have consulted Dr. Google or WebMD? Most of you, right? You've accessed expertise as opposed to hiring a professional. You've already started shifting to relying on technology to solve your most intimate problems. This is a little bit of a check-in to see where if you guys understand where we are right now. Some things have happened in the world that a lot of people don't know about. IBM Watson is an artificial intelligence platform created by IBM, and I'm putting up there 3 examples of things that either already happened, are going to happen soon, or are going to happen some point in the future, and I want you to look at them and think in your mind as I click them up there. If you think this has already happened, oh yeah, totally, I read about that, that happened, or oh my God, that could happen, I heard it could happen. So IBM Watson beats the best person on Jeopardy. IBM Watson reads MRIs for clinical support and tells the doctor what to do, so a doctor is now taking orders from a machine. Or IBM Watson on a college campus was a teaching assistant. Students didn't know it, but they emailed somebody, say John, and said, John, what's my homework? John, I got this wrong. And John emailed back and forth with the students, and the students never knew they were talking to software. Did that happen yet, or could that happen? Automated Insights is a platform based on IBM that will take a pile of data, a set of sports scores or financial reports, and build a narrative story that you will read and not know it was written by software. Did Automated Insights make 300 million stories, which is about the equivalent of all media we do in a single year? Did Automated Insights hit 1 billion stories, or is the Associated Press now relying on artificial intelligence to write most US earnings reports? Additive manufacturing is essentially 3D printing of any kind. Have we been able to 3D print 10 houses in a single day, or is that something we say we are going to be able to do in 100 years? Can we now print a 3D print a firearm that actually shoots bullets? Can we 3D print pills that you could take that are FDA approved? And then the last column is autonomous vehicles, which is any self-driving car or structure. Can you call up Uber and have an Uber show up without a human in it because it's driverless? Can you wait for a bus, get on the bus, realize you are not only the only passenger, but the only person, the only human on the bus? Or can you buy a car that will self-drive and self-park? I think these things, some of them happened, some of them in the future. Anybody think these things all already happened? With the exception of the driverless Uber, which was out, more news was about that in the last week. We could have had this meeting a year ago. Most of these things happened between 2013 and 2014. So when we talk about 2016 and 2026, 2036, you have to understand where we are at 2016. All of these things either have happened or are happening now. So when we look at 2026, I know it's the 25th anniversary of the internet, but in reality, it became in public use between 95 and 96. So the last 20 years, the internet has really shaped things. And the iPhone came out in 2007, so I really say that that's the dawn of the smartphone. I'm sure many of you realize we would not have Airbnb, Uber, any aspect of the collaborative economy. We probably would not have Barack Obama as president, and we certainly would not have Donald Trump as a candidate without Twitter. Obama's presidency was made on social media. Trump's candidacy is made in 140 characters. That would not be possible without the smartphone. So the smartphone is changing industries, launching new industries, and changing our political landscape. So we are now a hyper-connected world where the majority of the developing world is connected to the internet, largely by mobile. 45% of the globe is connected right now. So if we want to look 10 years and 20 years forward, which is what we're going to do in this exercise, here we are in 2016, we're a hyper-connected global world, 45% connected by the internet. 2026, you can get a bucket of KFC delivered by a drone. You can have a driverless car pick you up. Artificial intelligence will become a norm, and an Internet of Things will reshape a lot of what we do as devices will connect and communicate around us. In 2036, VR, AR will be a norm. How many of you guys are playing Pokemon Go? That's just the beginning of an augmented reality. We will have drone flights. We will have biohacking. Anybody watch Orphan Black? I saw the final episode last night. Wow, that's good. And we will have a human mission to Mars, they predict, by 2035. So if we look 10 years forward, these are some of the changes, some of which will be norms. And if we look at change over time, if you took 30, we are shifting between linear and exponential change. If you took 30 steps, you'd be about 30 meteors. If you took 30 exponential steps, where each step is double the prior step, you'd be 26 billion miles, you'd be 1 billion miles 26 times around the globe. So we're shifting between linear and exponential change. And we are just at the beginning of that shift, and the mobile internet is one of the biggest catalysts for it. So the net result of all of this stuff is that anything mentally routine or predictable is decreasing in value. Anything uniquely human, which is why we've identified the agile mindset, empathy, divergent thinking, social emotional intelligence, and an entrepreneurial outlook as uniquely human skills that are very important, we believe will increase in value. So if we look at our agile mindset Gen Ed curriculum, I'll just do this in a single page. We have 5 courses in the Gen Ed curriculum. The first one is managing transitions, change is the norm. That's getting students focused on adapting to change continuously and to take responsibility for themselves as a brand and as a constant learner. Core ENGL, which is the writing intensive course, is about understanding unstructured problems and written expression. Need finding is about paying attention to see a little more around you, understand your biases, and learn oral communication. Creating and capturing value is about the transdisciplinarity as a norm, collaboration as a norm, and creating new value. And then the integrated capsum is do something of value aligned with our core values and launch your career. So the exercise we're going to do, I need you guys to understand 2016. We're going to talk about 2026 and 2036. The exercise is going to be focused on life in 2036. We're going to speculate. So if we look at our reach, in 2016 we're a global society. 2026 we should have the Mars rover on Mars, so we'll have a robot to Mars, and by 2036 we should have a human on Mars. So we're going from global to intergalactic. Our economy is shifting, as we mentioned, from being based in the developed world to the developing world. So there's a shift in our power structure. We're getting increasingly connected. We are absolutely connected in the developed world. We will soon be connected in the developing world. Tools, we used to, back in the day we had hand tools, then we had smart tools. Soon artificial intelligence, which is now assistive to us, and you're searching in Google, and it suggests results for you. You've already integrated some artificial intelligence in your life. If I took your phones away from you and I wiped out your contact list and I handed it back to you, how many people could you call? You're already part cyborg. You've already outsourced that part of your brain. Artificial intelligence will become collaborative, and then it will become directive. They believe that there'll be artificial intelligence on board of directors in the 2030s. Travel, right now we have assisted driving technologies. Your car will automatically brake so you don't hit someone. You maybe have the kind of car you can take your hands off the wheel on the highway. We will have self-driving cars, we will have self-driving drones, and we will have Hyperloop by 2036. We're losing what we do today, what we think of as human, to automation in increasing numbers. We'll lose about half of it by 2036. And we have dramatically changing demographics between an aging society in the developed world and youth boom in the developing world. So given these factors, and I'm going to put this up again at the end, this is our exercise. It's 2036. It's 20 years from now. You guys are going to work in your tables. Becker received a $100 million gift today. We received a $100 million gift in today's dollars to build the higher ed institution or whatever learning is needed in 2036. Assume a complete reset. Assume no faculty or build faculty. Assume no athletics or build athletics. And you have whatever time we have left to brainstorm.